Hey, welcome to Spirited Lamb. Thanks for checking out our videos. In this video, Sister Mary Rose talks about her experience processing with the Holy Eucharist from California all the way to Indiana for the National Eucharistic Congress. At one point during the talk, Sister wanted to show a slideshow, but the AirPlay wasn't working properly, so we weren't able to get it up on the screen. What she did instead was she turned around the iPad and started showing everybody in the room from the iPad. At that point, the iPad kind of blocked the mic, so the audio levels are a little bit lower in that area, but it's only for a short period. At one point during the talk, Sister shows us some videos. Because of copyright stuff, we decided just to cut that section out. If we find them, we'll link them in the description so you can check them out. Sister had a pretty cool experience, so we hope you enjoyed the talk.
So, I was asked to present my experience for the Eucharistic Revival. Are you all familiar with the Eucharistic Revival? We're in our third year, and they had the Eucharistic pilgrimages from the north, south, east, and west. Ours was the longest route, and then we met and all congregated, came together in Indianapolis, Indiana, the day before the Eucharistic Congress began. So,
can I interrupt you?
Yes.
Can everyone hear her? Because we can scoot up closer to you.
I don't have a microphone. Ever since one of the walks, I've had this gruffly voice anyway, so. But usually I project my voice to the point that in the past people say I talk too loud. I just came back from Mass, so I was a little late, but it's a vigil of Our Lady of the Assumption. But I thought this was beautiful, the bulletin cover. Is this regular? You go to Santa Clara. Is that a regular bulletin cover from Santa Clara?
No.
It was probably just for the feast day. Anyway, so this is a quote from Clare of Assisi. We become what we love, and who we love shapes what we become, by St. Clare. I thought that was beautiful. So I had the opportunity, with permission from my superior, when I first heard about the Eucharistic pilgrimage. And it was for I told the people this when they asked me, why are you going? My three intentions were, number one, I'm a convert, and my conversion happened after college, and it was because of being given the gift of faith that Jesus was truly present on the altar and in the tabernacle. When I first went to Mass, I had been studying Old Testament, and I had asked, because I'd been involved in the Protestant churches, and I was on my way to become a missionary to Mexico, and I was at a point of asking, when I'm to sacrifice, there's all these laws in Leviticus, where are they being fulfilled? Because Jesus said not a letter of the law would be abolished. So when I went to Mass, I saw sacrifice. And I saw a lot of the laws being fulfilled that Jesus fulfilled through the Mass. And so that was my point of conversion. I did go through sessions with the priest, and every time I had my reactions, but I didn't say anything to him. It was once a week, and after I went home, I prayed and talked to Jesus about what I had heard. Anyway, at the end, I felt like I was on the top of a hill, and I saw the Protestant approach to Jesus, to Christianity, and the Catholic approach. And so the point of my conversion was, did I really believe Jesus was on the altar at Mass and in the tabernacle? And I had said, yes, I did believe that. I hadn't received Jesus in Holy Communion because I wasn't Catholic. But if I walked away from the church at that point, I would have been denying my Lord. So that's why I became Catholic. But I already anticipated the reaction of a lot of my Protestant friends. And also I called down to Mexico. So does it make a difference that I'm a Protestant, that I'm no longer a Protestant, but a Catholic? And there was dead silence. And so the person on the other end finally spoke up and says, that might cause a problem. So that position of being a missionary kind of fell through. And that was in June. And so I went on a Catholic retreat in July and heard about a new community beginning, to which I belong to this day, to help people implement and live out Vatican Council II's call to holiness, helping people to grow in the spiritual life and grow in their prayer life. So when I heard about the Eucharistic pilgrimage, my first intention was to give thanks to Almighty God, to the Lord, for giving that gift of faith to me in the Blessed Sacrament, in the Eucharist. The second intention was to collect people's intentions and continue to pray throughout the pilgrimage, to pray for, and then as I went along, I asked people for intentions. The third thing was to pray in reparation for those who do not believe in Jesus' real presence, for those who've left the church because they don't know who they've left. Even though they joined some other Protestant churches, they don't know their faith well enough where they get all excited about Jesus. I've had people approach me because I've been at the mission all these years saying, come out and whip a Bible out and tell me about, oh, I found Jesus. I go, good, you found Jesus. Well, Jesus right there, by the way. And it's not like we haven't spoken about him, but as children, they don't always hear. And if they don't have the family support, they don't get the reinforcement, nor are the parents practicing. So I was praying in reparation and asking God's forgiveness because God is offended, because here he's given us greatest gift, his son, to feed us, to nourish us, to change us, to transform us, and to become great saints. So I actually borrowed this little presentation. It has little scriptures, and all these scriptures have had significance for me. So trust in the Lord with all your heart comes from Proverbs, and that was my definitely going forward on this pilgrimage. And then, let's go to the next one. So I said, here I am, Lord. The call of in 1 Samuel. And the Lord saying, here I am. You've called me. You're presenting yourself to the Lord. Speak, Lord, for your servant hears. But that's what the scripture says in its Revised Standard Translation. But to hear is not the same as listen. And so part of my pilgrimage, too, one thing I don't listen enough. Because sometimes I interrupt people while they're talking to me, and I don't listen to what the Lord is trying to say to me through them. Anyway, so on this pilgrimage, and I have this big blank spot because, let's see if it'll project it. I took 3,000 pictures. And you're not going to watch all 3,000 pictures. So Google, photos, put all this little presentation. So you're going to see all these pictures. It started at San Francisco, at Mission Dolores, San Francisco de Asís. It has those two names. I didn't know that. And then we began the next day after the vigil with Vespers, and then we began to walk across the Golden Gate. And when they said the Eucharistic pilgrimage, every walk was preceded by Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament exposed in the monstrance. Then we began with Mass at the Cathedral of San Francisco, and we went further. Can you read the little captions? It's not showing. It's showing on my thing. I don't know. There you go. So much for that. How come it's not showing? It's supposed to project pictures, right? It just has the app. Too bad. Can you see this? Okay, that's what I was talking about. Well, at the very bottom tells you where. And so what Google Photos did was it took different clips from the different cities that we went through. So let's play. So it started there, and one of the 21 missions. Then the next day we actually went to the cathedral. They only let the religious and priests process because we were 5,000 people. But we met at the center of the visitor center, and then we walked across. By the time we got there, the sisters, we were way in the back. So then we were shuttled back to the cathedral. Then you jump on, and so there were perpetual pilgrims. Any of you under 30, raise your hand. You could have been a perpetual pilgrim. I could not be because I was too old. So I followed the itinerary, found out where they were going to go, and drove myself. They alternated drivers. They were all in one van, and they had the Blessed Sacrament exposed the whole way. They said it was kind of tough at first because they didn't know what to do. They were dead silence. They didn't play songs. They didn't speak to each other. And then they started doing Lectio Divina and started praying the liturgy, the hours and things, and praying the rosary together while they were driving. Anyway, so we went to different states, and I thought, okay, 2,200 miles straight across. It went from California, Nevada. They took boats in California, in Benicia and all of that. I drove, and they took a boat. Anyway, with Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament. Then they went through up to Folsom. They actually went into the prison. We couldn't do that, but the bishop and the perpetual pilgrims went to the prison. we came out and then we walked to the next parish from the prison. That's the procession. And then they went to Nevada, to South Lake Tahoe, took another boat up to North Lake Tahoe, and then they crossed into southern Oregon, and then they went through Idaho, Boise, and across, and then down to Salt Lake City, and then on to Colorado, Denver, of course, the mountains, Rocky Mountains, crossed over Rocky Mountains into Boulder, then Denver, what else? Steamboat Springs, all those, mountain towns. And then into Nebraska, across Nebraska, into Kansas. I don't know, do you know the geography? Kansas, Iowa, I kept saying, where are we? Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, and then finally into Illinois, and then, Missouri, I said Missouri, yeah, and then into Indiana. So that took 2 months. And on my car, it recorded 9,000 miles, thank you very much. It wasn't 2,200 miles, okay. So what they did was there was a man who started a company, young adult. He's probably not that young anymore. He's probably maybe in his late 30s. He's still kind of young, okay, maybe 40s. Anyway, has a little family, I think 2 kids. But he started a company called Modern Catholic Pilgrim. Have you ever heard of them? Okay, yeah, Will Peterson. And he does pilgrimages here in the, walking. He organizes it, and then people, take. Well, the bishops contacted him and contracted him to make all the routes, So he showed up, one of the hardest walks, I think, in Nebraska. But when I was in North Lake Tahoe, his parents said, could you pray for our son? He's organizing this whole thing. So I said, I pray. I said, yes, I will pray for him. So then when he came to Nebraska, says, I heard you've been praying for me. I said, yes, I have. And after that the hardest walk, because there was no little water, it was a gravel road and dust was blowing, and there was no shade. It was 90 degrees out, and there were at least, I don't know, maybe a few hundred people. I said, could you tell them ahead of time, we need water. Some people carried their water, but one little bottle is not enough if you're walking 4, 5, 6 miles. Anyway, that was one of the hardest walks, and there were people that were going down because of heat exhaustion. Not stroke yet, but they were. So from then on, we had water. So Will did a good job. Anyway, I think Will then went on to the other routes and visited them while we continued. So the route that they had set up wasn't like to these big cities. The only big cities we hit were the ones that were on the weekends, like for the cathedrals and so forth. But during the week, he actually, instead of going through Nebraska and hitting the big cities, he went down on the little old highway. And we hit a parish, at least 3 parishes a day, different cities. So morning time, we'd have Mass, and we'd have Eucharistic procession, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. And then we'd get in the car, go to the next parish, have a potluck lunch with the folks, then take another procession. Then after that, we'd drive to the next city or town, and then we'd have Eucharistic adoration. They would have a time of healing, prayer, and so forth. And for the first few times, I skipped the evening one, so I could have dinner. So I could set up my camp and have dinner. But then I said, well, I guess I should go pray. So after that, I didn't even have time to cook anymore. But they had potlucks dinners, so that was the food we got. Utah, I made this note. Okay, so California, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, we had Mexican food for potlucks all the time. Not too variety, which was okay. Then we got to Colorado, we started having sandwiches, And then we had not free refried beans, we had baked beans, variety of baked beans, and salads. That was it. Anyway, change in diet. And then by the time we got to Indiana towards the end, the very last day, Will asked the perpetual pilgrims, which numbered probably, because they took a 12-person passenger van, took out the front seating,
had the Eucharist exposed in a little tabernacle and the monstrance. So there was room probably for about 8 to 10 people to sit there. And then you have the driver. And the friars of the renewal were the chaplains. So there were either 2 priests or there was 1 priest and a brother who accompanied each of the groups. And they rotated in. They didn't go for the whole trip because that way they could spread out for the different ones could participate. But the perpetual pilgrims were there all the time. And they chose them. They had to do this. I checked it out. I was going to, at least I'll fill out the application. And here, first thing they ask you is how old you are. So I go, And then you had this huge bio that, like a resume that you had to turn in. I don't have a resume, I'm a sister, what are you going to say? No, your education, all this. It must have been at least 6 pages, So of that group, they chose different ones from around the country, and they didn't all come from the same area. They were all mixed up. We had a woman from Georgia. We had a woman from Texas. We had another one from Kansas, a guy from Kansas, another one who was just going into Colorado for work. He was after the pilgrimage. So it was all mixed up. But essentially, I would say most everyone was in their 20s, between jobs or between just getting out of college. And so they were the perpetual pilgrims. And I'm glad I wasn't a perpetual pilgrim because they had to socialize the whole time. You know what I mean? Because they had guests, Will had set up guest homes for them to stay in. So when they got to town for the evening, they'd have to go and find their quarters. There were 2 seminarians from San Francisco that joined us. Well, they stayed with the priests, but the lay people stayed with different families. So you have to, be nice and who are you and tell your story and all that.
It didn't seem at all like you, sister.
No. I had my quiet time. I had my silent prayer. I had my time with the Lord in solitude because I tented, So you go to set up camps, so you go ahead. I had only time during the year to plan up through, I think, Oregon. And then I had to do start scrambling and do at least a week to 2 weeks out, finding places where to camp out. But it was very simple. I started deciding I'm going to stay in state parks because they're less expensive. And I got senior citizen rates. So it's a little cheaper. Yes. Well, I don't know, but not when I got there. A couple of times they did, yes. Make sure you were who you say you were, that kind of thing. But it was nice because the tent sites, I had a 1-man tent. Nobody's tenting these days. They're all in RVs or trailers. So you go to a tent site and there's 1 or 2 tents. It was nice. I didn't have to talk to anybody, just the Lord, So that's where I stayed. But because of the schedule was so intense, I'd set up tent before the evening session. You set it up, leave, come back when it's already kind of dark, go to sleep, get up. I have to tear my tent down before 8 o'clock mass, take a shower and clean up and all that. So I didn't even have time for breakfast most of the times. And so I didn't even have time to make coffee. So my body got used to not having coffee in the morning, a habit to break. Anyway, so then that was every day. That's the schedule. And they kept moving. There was only, and the schedule was on time. The perpetual pilgrims and the chaplains made sure they were, because the parishers were waiting for them, you see. So they were pretty on the dot as far as being there. There was only one time they were 4 hours late, and it was up between Nevada and southern Oregon because their van had a problem, some electrical problem. So they were delayed, and the poor little bishop was waiting for them. Well, they're gonna be here. And I got there before they did, Anyway, so that's essentially the whole day. But it was wonderful because you see the unity of the church, and everybody was kind and patient. I met a lot of people. The thing is, during the week, because we went to the smaller parishes and it was during the day, guess what age group of people we met? My age. They were mostly the retired folks, because everybody else is working. So they weren't able to participate. It was only on the weekends where we got those large crowds for like at the cathedrals and stuff. In Denver, there was like 5,000. They were in Denver, right? And it's a miracle because they saw me and I saw them. I mean, you bump into these people you least expect, you know? Because, yeah, I mean, how many times are you going to find somebody in a crowd of 5,000 people? It's a providence of God. And that's how God worked, at least for me, throughout the whole pilgrimage. It was providential that he would provide for me and provide a place. And so people started, this one lady from, it was EWTN, you know, article, did an article on me, and she met me in Denver. Tell me your story. So I told her the story. Anyway, that got published, and then other people read it, other news people read it, and they asked me, you know, well, can we meet up in Indiana? 2 people. I said, sure. Well, one lady interviewed me over the phone, and she wrote up an article towards the end of June for the Diocese of Brooklyn, New York. I go, New York? So anyway, she published it. I never saw it until I got to Indiana. I said, what happened to that article you wrote? Well, she did a different take than the lady in Denver, which I was surprised because she was a convert too, so she picked up on my one statement. And my one statement was that all my growing up, I grew up in Nebraska, and I knew a lot of Catholics, and we moved to California. I knew a lot of Catholics. Do you think any Catholic ever invited me to their church? Did I ever go to Mass with them? How I was introduced to Christianity was through the Pentecostal Christians. When I was in 5th grade, they invited me to their little white church, and that's how I came to know Jesus. Bible stories, you know, all the Old Testament Bible stories they have at Sunday school. A family sponsored me to 2 children's camps during the summer, and that's where I really encountered Jesus. And my prayer life and reading of the scriptures grew, because when we moved to California, there was nobody. So the Lord and I had a wonderful time. And I prayed for a car when I was 16 and my license. And on my birthday, my mom took me, I got my license, and then she took me and got a car. I never asked. And never did I tell them that was what I was praying for, because my parents were always working. They didn't have, I thought they had no faith or religion in their life. Anyway, so then I started going to church, Pentecostal church every Sunday, because I promised the Lord, I said, I'll return to the church, the one I was familiar with, which is a half an hour up the road in Central California. And so they had Sunday morning service, Sunday evening service, so I'd go home in between. They'd have Wednesday Bible study, and they had a youth group on Friday. My dad was not happy that I was going to church too much. Anyway, so that's how I wanted to, by the time I was a senior, I wanted to be a missionary, go to Bible college. But I knew my parents weren't going to go for that, because, you know, I'm Chinese-Japanese. I grew up on the Chinese family side, and everybody's getting an education, college, and making a lot of money, and driving Mercedes-Benz and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, I don't think they'll let me go to Bible college. So I agreed. I went to California State University, and I majored in something that interests me, which was nursing, because I like sciences. And for me, science proved there was a God. You know, because the God is a God of order. From the universe to the microscopic, everything has a particular order. So then, when I got to nursing school, there were 300 nursing students, had to do all these prereqs first year, all the sciences and everything. By the time the end of the first year, there was 150. And of the 150 back then, and probably still today, they only chose 40. So I said, okay, Lord, I'll go to Bible college, because I know I'm not going to get in. But I'll try. My number was 39. So I became a nurse. Then I met with Nurses Christian Fellowship, which is through InterVarsity, which was a Bible study thing for interdenominational, so they claim a lot of Catholics were participating in that. It was before the Focus came into existence. You know about Focus, right? Focus started with Curtis Martin, who's Our Lady of the Assumption's parishioner when he was a young adult. His parents were parishioners there. I don't know if they're still around or not. But that's how Focus kicked off back east, because of Curtis Martin. Anyway, questions, comments? Did I cover everything?
My pictures didn't stop. Anyway.
What was the structure of the final conference?
Okay, so the pilgrims came on the 16th, and they came to this parish called St. John the Evangelist, which was right across the street from the convention center in Indianapolis, which was attached to Lucas Oil Field. It's where they have NCYC back east, and because it's huge, it fits 50,000 people. And so once the pilgrims came in, the next day they started with 8 registrations. That evening. Oh, and the next day they started with registrations. The sisters could get housing at Butler University, which was like a half an hour away. So I was trying to register. I was camping up until that time. And then they did registration. So the first day was which was a Thursday, was filled with registration. Some of the people I met, they came to the Congress, and so they text me, "We're in the line." I go, "Oh, that's wonderful. I haven't checked in yet." Well, it's all around the building. I go, "Oh, okay." An hour and a half to 2 hours it took them in the line to get into registration. And it was supposed to start in the evening time. So I said, "I think I'm just going to go to the stadium. I'll check in later," because the registrations were going until 9 o'clock at night. And so that's what I did, and I just walked through registrations. Those poor folks had to wait an hour and a half because I didn't want to miss the first opening. So you have the whole stadium. They have the floor covered, so that's why it could easily fit more than 50,000. They probably, by the end of the weekend, was 60,000 easily, because other people came in on different days, because they were working, so they wouldn't come until Saturday or Sunday. And so the structure was you'd have an opening session, and they would have different, speakers and so forth. And then everybody broke for lunch. And then they had individual workshops that you could choose from when you registered. But me, dummy, I only registered. I never chose my track. So they had youth, they had young adults, they had, Spanish, they had these tracks that you should have signed up when you registered. I didn't sign up for anything. So I just took what was left over, which wasn't that much, because it said closed. So the convention center had these big halls, and I guess those tracks, you'd have special speakers for different topics and so forth. And I went to a couple of, but I stayed, the morning sessions, everybody was there. And then you would have the chapel. The church was made into a chapel. They'd have perpetual adoration throughout that time in that church, St. John the Evangelist. So you could go pray adoration whenever. And it was always full. Like, the whole church was full. So after you'd have to eat there. You couldn't bring food in. So you had to go to the concession stands, which there were lines, kind of people. So the church even had a little concession, like pick up food and so forth. So then you would, after the first session, you'd have lunch. Then you'd have at least two or three sessions after that. And then evening, they would have a huge gathering again where they would do music. You know who, what's his name? Huh? No. His group was there, yes. His group was there. No, Lombacher. Do you all know Lombacher? Andrew was singing. He was, I saw him on the big screen and go, I know that guy. His hair is long, I'm going, he's there. And I looked on the brochure. It is him. So he was there too. So they had different musicians doing contemporary music, and then we had Thomas, who was more, 4-part harmony, a cappella, and Latin kind of things. And then they would have Eucharistic procession at night. So with the bishops, all the bishops I was trying to count them, because I like to get on the 3rd or 4th tier to look down. Everybody else is on the floor, like all the sisters. They were all on the ground level. I know. Too many people. So I would say, and I took a lot of pictures from above, kind of thing. But a lot of priests, a slew of them, because they all took like part of the seating and the bishops. I don't know how many people, how many bishops were there, but it was at least a few hundred, Archbishop Jose Gomez was there. He offered Mass in Spanish. I did go to that Mass. So they had Masses at different times that you could attend as well every day. So that was more or less the format. It started at 8, ended at 9. And we who were staying at Butler, they only had a shuttle from 6:30 to 8, so you'd have to catch the shuttle. And then coming home at night, starting at 9 to 10 or 11. I'm going, oh. So
How many days was the Congress?
it started on Thursday, but mostly registrations until the evening time, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday it ended around after the morning. That was it.
Was it all growing up to one event, or each day was?
Each day had its own event.
individual
Yeah.
theme?
And then, yeah, they did. They had different themes. You can go online and look it all up. There were youth groups there. Some local parishes, they brought their youth group, and they were in the Butler University too. I'm going, oh my gosh, look at them. Anyway, so the first day they were like you were even in line to get breakfast. They served breakfast at the Butler. Anyway, what I thought, because my campsite was always at least a half an hour to 40 minutes outside of town, because it wasn't where the pilgrimage was going. But I noticed, at least in Indiana, talk about white flight. Have you ever heard of white flight? You know what white flight is? What kind of sociologist are you?
Not very good ones, apparently.
That's where, the old downtowns were founded by the European immigrants. And the white flight is they left and they went out into the suburbs. And so the more recent immigrants are on the inside of the city. So you go down from the stadium and you have the black neighborhood. And then on to the other side, you have the Hispanic neighborhood. Where I tented were all the Anglo, as we say in California, or Caucasian people living out and had nice homes, big homes with a lot of territory, But the immigrant populations were in the cities. And we're at the old churches. They got the advantage of the old. St. Louis was another example. I go, oh my gosh, look at these old churches. They couldn't move the churches. So the immigrant populations got the advantage of the beautiful old churches. I mean, ours is 1782, but it's built by the indigenous and, the Spaniards. But those churches, St. Louis Cathedral, anybody been to St. Louis Cathedral? It's like a cathedral from Europe. It's on a smaller basis, but it's got all this mosaic and gold and everything. Beautiful churches. So a lot of my pictures are the churches, taking pictures of the churches. Beautiful churches, because, they were built in the 1800s, so that was still the structure. And, when you do an aerial, y'all know the shape of a Catholic church, right? Cross. It's usually a cross. The older churches. Now, I can't say that about the newer constructions. Or circles. But, and they face the east. I was surprised at Springfield, Bishop Paparocki. Yeah. At that diocese, they face the east for Mass.
They also have,
even if it's in English.
Is in the middle is in the main sanctuary.
Yeah. And they turn around, of course, for the readings and then, for part. But I was like, ooh, this is nice, Anyway, those were some of my observations on the road. So I met the Terre Haute, Indiana. There was a slough, Terre Haute. Terre Haute. I don't know how to pronounce it. Thank you. So we were at this old town part, and it was a university place, parish. But I met these Filipino people, and I started talking to them. Well, you're Asian. I'm Chinese, Japanese, Anyway, so I started asking them, so you're retired, what did you? One was a surgeon, his wife was an anesthesiologist, another one was a physical therapist, doctor. So they were all there, and I said, why are you all here? Because they immigrated and they landed there. And it was because of liability insurance. He said the surgeon had been up in Chicago, and it was like, I was spending more money on liability insurance than, having any income. So then he moved down to Terre Haute, and he's Hoot. Ho. Terre Haute. It's H-A, it's French. Yeah, Terre Haute. Is that like Illinois without the S? Anyway. So I was telling them, even across the whole pilgrimage, not only were they mostly retired folks, they were all Anglos. You didn't see any they said, there's a lot of Filipino Catholics. I said, I didn't see them. I said, they're probably working. Because, during the week, people don't get off of work. And so that was the only disadvantage of going to the Eucharistic pilgrimage during the week in all these places, because the timing, it was morning, afternoon. Some evenings you'd see the Latino population come out, but mostly you didn't see that many. Like, I didn't hardly see any Asians at all. I told them no. Woo. So they took me out to an Asian restaurant for dinner. No sandwiches. Anyway, so that's what I can tell you. Will Peterson asked all the perpetual pilgrims across there, so there must have been there were 4 groups, so at least 40 of them, 30 to 40 of them. What would you like for lunch? Because we're going to treat you to lunch. That was the day before the Congress started. They all said, no sandwiches. So he went to a restaurant and got these different salads, So that was nice. I thought it was, and they invited me because I wasn't part of the perpetual group, and very few sisters on the pilgrimage. 0 sisters, I should say.
Sister, were there other people besides you
From
following the perpetual pilgrim?
I was the only one that started at the beginning. There was a couple that I met in, and they helped me. They began in Nebraska because they had summer commitments, so they couldn't join until we got to Nebraska, and they were from San Luis Obispo. Yes, it's Andy and Debbie, and they want to start walking pilgrimages up there from San Luis Obispo to different parishes. Yeah, I invited them this one, and they text me, well, maybe next year. And then a couple from Bakersfield, Hispanic, a family who was pulling a trailer, but he was a deacon candidate. So they started in San Francisco, and then they left in Colorado because he had a deacon's retreat he had to go to. So he drove all the way back to Bakersfield, did the retreat, came all the way back and rejoined us in Nebraska. And then they disappeared, so I texted him, and the wife's brother died of an industrial accident. So they had to go all the way back to Bakersfield. But they did show up at the Eucharistic Congress. But can you imagine driving with a trailer? I have a little Corolla, so I got the best mileage. But those vans and the trailer, and RV. The San Luis Obispo had an RV, so. So
How many perpetual pilgrims were there?
between 30 to 40. Each group had at least 10 because of the vans. They're all matching vans, and they had the what do you call those wraps that talked about the Eucharistic pilgrimage thing. So I'm going to see if this will play, since it won't play my video. I had it set to place, it doesn't go that way.
Sister,
Okay.
you want to tell us your best highlight of the whole thing?
Everybody always asks that question.
What was your best highlight?
I had several worse ones. You want your best one, not the worst ones? The best? It was over, I met one. I mean, every spot I met, this is the thing, and people don't realize, our society needs the Catholic faith because it really touches people's lives. Everybody was so kind, and even in the 50 to 60,000 people when, it was like freeway traffic, everybody was so patient, so kind, nobody got upset, nobody yelled at each other. I mean, people's lives are touched so that they're nice, they can get along. There's a sense of unity regardless of what state you came from, what color you were, or who you are, that kind of thing. So my highlight was meeting all the different people, I think. And they were very generous, Our community's never believed in asking for donations, like sending out letters, support us. We just trust that God would inspire people. And so I was given throughout the whole pilgrimage enough to pay for my gas. That's a lot of money. So it supplemented my gas fees, So maybe because I'm a sister, I don't know. And the interviews and the newspaper articles were because it is very unusual for a sister to be by herself. And so my line was, well, you're all by yourself. I said, no, I'm not. I got all the angels and saints and heaven souls in purgatory with me. It's very crowded, actually, you see. And I had 2 igloos, so I really didn't have room for somebody to ride with me. One in the front that you plug into the lighter. it didn't keep things that cold. And then one thicker one that kept ice, that kept melting. 90 to almost 100 degrees in the Midwest in the summertime. You know, you can't keep ice. They say, oh, it keeps ice for 4 to 5 days. Yeah, if you're not in 90 degree, 100 degree temperatures. It kept it maybe 1 or 2 days. That was it, you know, so. Anyway, I didn't cook. After the first week or so, I didn't cook that much. I didn't need it that much. It was mostly drinks and stuff that I had to get.
Katie.
So there you go.
Hi, I'm Christine Persichetti, anchor of Current News. If you like what
Sister, did you camp in the Rockies?
No, we drove over the Rockies.
Okay, so in Steamboat, you guys did stay.
Yes. Yeah, it was warmer then. It's in the 90s in the summertime. So, what can I tell you? Actually, it was in Boulder that we spent the night after we crossed the Rockies, you know, because it was moving along. And where did I stay in Boulder? Oh, do I remember one place to the other? No. I have relatives in Denver, but I didn't stay with them. Did I stay with them? No, I didn't stay with them. Anyway, I only stayed with people along the route maybe twice. One person, I take that back 3 times. One person, I didn't have a campsite, so I asked the parishioners in Spanish, because I met with the Spanish-speaking people. Oh, yes, we know this sacristan lady. She'll put you up, because they had all-night adoration, so they were going to be at the church. You know, such a humble abode. And so they gave me their bed while they were at adoration. And then another family invited me because it was going to rain. And I'm going, I don't want to rain. Those my harrowing experiences were the rain. My tent leaked. I was sleeping one night and I go, why is this wet? I had an air mattress at least, so it was above the water. I'm going, it's wet. It was leaking. So I tried everything. The next stop, I got, you know, what do you call that? Scotch guard for tents. It worked, you know, except the door. You know, the way the construction is, it still came through the door. And the seams. I even tried this stuff to seal the seams. It turned white. I don't know if it really sealed it. Anyway, for the pilgrimage, I got a new tent. Yeah, well, it was fresh. My first time using it. Anyway, so another time I stayed, I met a family. A lot of the local people, like if Jesus didn't come to their parish, they drove in from other places, maybe a couple hours or something. So one family in, what was it? Where's Abe Lincoln? No, where was the guy, the tallest guy, the largest guy? Alton. They took me to a statue. You know, it's the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. He holds the record for being the tallest man. You don't know about him? Anyway, they took me to a statue. I put my foot down where his foot wasn't. But they let me stay in their place. I'd met them in the city before them, and I was just talking to them at lunch. That's when I talked to people at meals and at breaks, but I didn't talk to them while we were walking. I was praying. Because as I was sharing earlier, you can't talk and walk at the same time. You're short of breath, you know? So they had a really nice place, so they let me spend the night there, and I avoided the rainstorm. So I went through rain 3 times. The other harrowing experiences were 2 of them. One was Nebraska, going to a Holy Family Shrine, gravel road, not enough water, no shade. And I was like dying. So there was this little hill to go up to the shrine, and I asked the lady who was parked on the side taking pictures of us, could you give me a ride to the top of the hill? Sure, jump in, sister. Nice air-conditioned SUV. So I rode up that. But ever since then, I've had this stuff in my throat because I think it got in my bronchioles and stuff. The gravel, the dust, you know. The other harrowing thing was, we had gone, I can't even remember what state it was, but it was a 9-mile walk. Have you ever heard of the Katy Trail? The Katy Trail is in Missouri, and it used to be the railroad tracks. So it was covered with trees or something. It followed a creek or something. I don't know, but there's a lot of trees. So that was nice. Well, they took out the tracks and they made this trail. It's like 64 miles straight through Missouri. So you could pick it up at different places. Well, it was sprinkling. Well, we don't know. The perpetual program lady, one lady was in charge. She says, I don't know if we're going to make this whole thing. It's 9 miles. But we'll do it. We'll try. So they walk in the sprinkles. It turned into a little more showers the whole time. And then their van kind of like there's cross streets from the farms, you know. So the van was following, and every cross street was checking in, and they were checking the weather also. At 4 miles, they said, it's getting heavier. We're supposed to stop. Because, you know, you don't want to get Jesus wet. Well, he was under an umbrella and everything, you know, in the monstrance. And so they stopped. We went on. There were 13 of us that we walked the rest of the way. And I had this habit on, and it's like cotton. I had a rain jacket on, coat. It poured. For 4 hours, we walked in the rain. That was the horrendous thing. And I was like, sledging along. I was at the beginning, and by the end, I was way back there. And one gentleman, the San Luis Obispo people, he walked with me, trying to encourage me. But I'm short, and I have to take 2 steps to one person's step, you know, because he's like 6 feet tall, and he was so kind to walk slow, so to wait for me. And as soon as we got to the end, it stopped raining. So there you go. That was the horrendous part. That was one of the hardest walks. But it's not the distance. You all got to come to the Santa Barbara to San Buenaventura mission pilgrimage. I totally encourage you. How many was there last year? This year? Nobody. Oh, he was on a hoverboard. That was not fair. You got to walk that one, because that's the hardest, you know.
Come on, it's the easiest of all the mission trails in California.
All around the freeways and the residents, that's what makes it hard, you know. Oh, and my third one was Steamboat Springs. Parishioners, so they relied on the local parish to decide what route they were going to take for Eucharistic procession. Most places did it through the town, because you want Jesus to bless the town and the people, right? Not Steamboat Springs. Where do they go? They go to the ski lift. And I'm going, so one of the people in there, so it's like switchbacks up the mountain. I said, what's the elevation here? 4,000. I go, oh, I come from sea level, you know, and I have asthma. So go, and where are we now? About 6,000. And then the ski lift is 8,000 feet, and we made it up there in less than, it was only a few miles, but the elevation change was tough, and I was huffing and puffing, you know. Because when you have asthma, your bronchioles don't adjust right away. It eventually does, but it takes time. So that was the hardest. Coming down was easy. I was keeping up with everybody. So one of the ladies was the doctor, a retired doctor. She says, I have asthma too. Just let me know if you need anything. And she keeps going, you know. I'm like, thank you. But I had somebody stay with me, just make sure I didn't faint or something. But I wasn't the only, one other guy was with me. Anyway, so I talked to Perpetual Pilgrims later, and they said that was one of the toughest processions we've had, because it was hard on us. And they were 20-year-olds. Come on. So that's the one. By the way, I got to keep going. So be still and know that I am gone, because the pilgrimage is meant to be a time of prayer. You know what? Have any of you taken pilgrimages? Mm-hmm. Why do you go on pilgrimage? I go every summer by myself. I do my own, but I do not like that, driving 11,000 miles. No. I usually go down to Mexico, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Anybody? Why do you go on pilgrimage?
To carve out quiet time with God.
Okay, very good. What else?
Holy places.
Yeah, to go pray in holy places. What else?
A metaphor for our earthly journey.
Thank you. Yes, because what I find on pilgrimages is you get in the habit of saying, okay, I'm totally dependent on you, Lord. Whatever comes, let it happen. So it's a good training for your attitude during the year when you're living regular life. Instead of trying to be in control, why isn't this working out like I planned, because it never does anyway, So for me, pilgrimages help me to be detached from my own ideas and stuff. You plan, but you offer it to the Lord and see what happens. And usually it doesn't work how you plan it. So for me, it's a reminder that I'm really not in control of my own life, that God is, and I allow him to be. So it's a microcosm. It's supposed to be a microcosm of your life, So anyway.
When you use the term pilgrimage, does it have to be associated with the holy place?
Not necessarily.
So a hike could be defined as a pilgrimage.
Yeah, it's more.
Provided your mindset is.
Yeah. Now, I'm not into, just so you know, because some Catholics are because they revitalized it. I'm not into, what are those maze things that they call? Labyrinths. I'm not into labyrinths because to me that's kind of fake. Because, you bump into one spot and then you go to another. When you're on pilgrimage, you bump into a spot and you really have to readjust, in real time. So I'm more into pilgrimages than I am into those kind of prayer experiences. Because you're in the midst of praying all the time with the Lord, seeing what's happening. So God says in Joshua, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Is that on there? Yeah. Good. Next one. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I didn't really eat that much, which is good because I lost a few pounds because I needed to. But it's like even being dependent of when you're going to have time to eat, or, you do that in daily life, right? But to definitely be hydrated, that kind of thing. And a lot of people don't drink when they're walking because they think, I have to use the restroom. No. You're supposed to because you're sweating it out or you're perspiring it out. So you really aren't going to need the restroom. That's what I found. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, for we walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians. And that's our whole life, really. So our life is meant to be a pilgrimage. So, but we need to be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. This picture where I'm doing this, it was after Eucharistic procession in Indianapolis. The 50 to 60,000 people walked up the street. And they made the sisters go before the Eucharist. The sisters were all in line. And come on. I go, okay. I was with the people I knew, but no, I had to go with the sisters. So they had the servers, they had the sisters, they had the and then the Eucharist was on a trailer way in the back. And the people followed the laity followed the trailer with Jesus. And then they took it up to the war memorial, and so he was way high and he was blessing. So at the end, everybody started to disperse, and we had to walk back. There were no shuttles. By the way, most places had shuttles. The parishes had provided, so if you walked 2 or 3 miles, they would shuttle you back to the parish to go get your car. I think there were only 2 or 3 times we actually had to plan ahead of the people we knew to leave one car there at the end and a car at the beginning. Anyway, so I'm like this because I saw those San Luis Obispo people in the crowd of 50 to 60,000. So we walked back together and they treated me to dinner. Anyway, so that's why I was like, I can't believe I see you in this crowd. Anyway, so with God, nothing shall be impossible. And the people were so good. Everybody, in all the places, they would come out. Here, they were the Latino population, Spanish-speaking population. That was the parish. They had the First Communion kids on the trailer. They had a little altar on the trailer and a semi, had it all decorated. So the people followed behind. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So faith, hope, and love, these 3, but the greatest of these is love. And this is the crowd of 50 to 60,000 in the stadium. And love one another as I have loved you. So it's amazing to me. Even in the exchange of workshops, there was the very first day was very confusing because, some people were going this way, so another crowd was going this way. I said, why don't they do one side go one direction and that's what they did for the other days. They had these signs, stay to the right, stay to the right. So It was more organized that way, but they lived and learned, Anyway, all those people, it was very peaceful, and prayerful. You could hear a pin drop at night when they had Eucharistic adoration. The picture to the left, they bring in procession to the Eucharist and darken the room, and most everybody knelt. That was the other thing. Okay, y'all know about standing here in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles during the Lamb of God. Well, that was implemented with a document about 25 years ago with Cardinal Mahoney, because they anticipated the new translation of the sacramentary. And so, I don't know if he wrote the document, but it was you're supposed to stand in unity with everybody until the last person receives communion, that kind of thing. Well, across the country, even in San Francisco, nobody stands. They all kneel. And so, guess what? If you want to be in unity with the whole church, I'm not telling you, I'm just saying, it was an observation. People kneel. Everybody kneels at Thomas Aquinas, but not at the mission, and there's different, some kneel, some don't. We have a lot of visitors, so they kneel, but our parishioners have usually remained standing. So just thought I'd let you know.
I wrote a letter to Archbishop Gomez saying, can we please change that and implement everybody kneeling?
And what did he say?
He didn't respond.
Okay,
because
this
the Archbishop
is this being recorded? Is this being recorded?
I think Bishop
Edit.
in Oakland and the Bishop of Sacramento issued a letter before Easter changing that.
Good, thank you.
I told him, I said, look, these other local bishops in California have changed that, can we please?
Okay, this is what, Archbishop Jose Gomez is Opus Dei.
Yes.
Okay, when he first came, he didn't want to change anything because the rumors were, because I heard him, maybe we won't have our jobs, downtown, that kind of thing. But he was very gentle, moved in, and just let things be the way they were. And he just waited his time, So I knew a priest who asked in the priest gathering with him, so what are you going to correct this because everybody's doing something different? And he said, let the people do what they want to do. So if some people want to kneel, they kneel. If some people want to remain standing, they remain. The only people that across the country that remained standing was a few old people that can't kneel because of their knees or whatever. And usually in the Hispanic population, they remain standing out of respect for the Eucharist. But every place else is kneeling.
I remember when Cardinal Mahoney published a letter, somebody made this funny observation, someone outside of our diocese said, I think it's because they have earthquakes in California. If you're standing up, you can get out the door more quickly.
We have had earthquakes at the mission and the chandelier swing it and we duck. We don't run out, we duck under the pews to be, for safety. Anyway, the mission's never been destroyed by fire, but not an earthquake.
Sister, you should ask Father Tom, because he wants people, he's happy for people to receive communion on their tongue. What's the big deal? Just...
Let the people do what they want to do. You could ask them, but, it's come up. It has come up. And I went back to the original document anyway, and the whole idea was a sign of unity, but see, the people remain standing until the priest sits down, which was not in the document. It's when the tabernacle door closes. That's when you can kneel.
You should be able to pray right after Holy Communion.
I do.
You're watching everybody.
I close my eyes and I pray. And then I peek to see if we're finished yet. Anyway, so Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Now this is the closing. Maybe. Oh, it didn't do it. Oh, fiddlesticks. I had more slides and it didn't take. Okay, so much for that. I wonder what happened to it. Okay, the thing is, you won't see it because it's not here. So boom, we're finished. There is, Archbishop Jose Gomez was there, right? So they announced the next Eucharistic Congress will be at the Jubilee of Jesus's death, which is 2033. I don't know if I'm going to be here, y'all. You might be, but I might not be. Anyway, that's like, what, 9 years from now or something like that?
I think you'll still be sleeping in your tent.
I don't know. Anyway, so then they brought up, well, Archbishop Jose Gomez invited from Indianapolis to Los Angeles at the end of Corpus Christi for next year, the Eucharistic pilgrimage to come to, yes. Well, it's probably going to be a driving, walking. Similar to what we did, because they're still covering the same mileage. But it took 2 months. Come on, that's a long distance. Well, I think, I'm going to talk to Will, I think they may take the southern route because a lot of areas were neglected, you know? Yeah, it would be. I went down from Tennessee down, even though the southern route caught some of those places, like I went through Alabama to Mother Angelica's place, you know, through Alabama. I drove through Mississippi, then you keep going and you go to Louisiana, very Catholic, but I didn't stay. I camped out there, and then I went into Texas, Carlsbad, New Mexico, Texas, then New Mexico. Carlsbad Caverns, have you ever been there? Y'all need to go there. I went there when I was in second and fourth grade, and I still remembered it. So that's why I wanted to go back. It's much more modern now. Anyway, you walk down, but it's amazing how the Lord, that. And then I went to Arizona, and then of course you've seen Grand Canyon, right? I only see a couple of nods. Grand Canyon, right? They have a state park there, and I camped out in Grand Canyon State. So did all the other hundreds of people. They had their RVs, a lot of tents. Anyway, I just spent the night there, though. But so that's the southern route. And then I came into Southern California that way. Corpus Christi. Yeah, on Corpus Christi. Now, we don't have a stadium as large as Lucas. I don't know where they're going to put him. So, LA Convention Center? No, that's not that big either. Because, you know, the Lucas Stadium is a football stadium. So that's why it was so big. Do you know of any other places? Anyway, anticipate that. But you could anticipate, because you could drive back there. I'm not going to do it this time, not 9,000 miles later. But it's a way to go. So I totally encourage you to go on pilgrimage, even if it's your own little pilgrimage. But to focus on that, because you really have to be dependent on God for what the next day will bring and so forth, or who you may meet. You know, the pilgrimage that we just went through, a lot of people met new people, you know, that kind of thing, because they were from all over, not just the local area. So, but I talked only at meals. Any questions, comments? No? You all want to see my 3,000 pictures? Have at it. Because they're all the same in a sense, you know, the procession, the Eucharist. I got blessed with benediction at least 3 times a day. It was cool. I took pictures at the elevation, and then I went trying to behave myself.
Are there any upcoming pilgrimages that you recommend?
Yeah, next year. Next year.
What she's referring to
Corpus
is
Christi, which is in
the Junipero Serra pilgrimage, which is always going to be the second weekend in August from now on. Esteban's working on a documentary, currently shot a lot of film on the last one, which is this past weekend. It's 2 days. You don't have to walk 35 miles in one day. We camp in Carpinteria at St. Joseph's Church. It's fully supported. And lots of people, like 300 people this year, which was awesome.
In my opinion, yours is better organized than the ones across the country.
Want to hear something
Yeah,
funny?
Mr. Wood.
Will Peterson called me before he did his, and he said, Greg, I heard about your pilgrimage. Can you tell me what you did?
I said,
There were no porta potties, number one. There wasn't enough water. Because I think they relied on the local parish to kind of like pitch in.
Yeah.
Some of them were good because they actually have golf cart with the water, you know, that kind of thing. But That one in Nebraska was pitiful.
The other thing to watch for is something called Camino California, which is a gentleman who's putting together a Lenten pilgrimage with the 40 days between all 21 missions with people doing different sections of it. So the website's Camino California. And that's a new development. There's a lot of developing and new pilgrimages around the country, around the world, and in California between the missions, which is a natural, you're going from holy site to holy site.
And it's usually weekends. That's why I can't participate, because they're catching people when you're off at work. You know. The other pilgrimages that they advertise are usually for retired folks because it's expensive, and they take a boat, or ship, I should say, or they go over to Europe, and and you get 5-star motel to stay in, and they have the big tourist buses that you travel in. So those are those.
Well,
kind
what
of
you can
pilgrimages.
do is you probably have heard of the Caminos to Santiago, where St. James is buried.
Oh my gosh, that's another walking one. They've been
Yeah,
on
so
it.
my daughter and I did the 500 miles called Camino Francés. You're walking from the border of the French Pyrenees across Spain. So there's big pilgrimage routes, Jerusalem where Jesus was, St. Peter's in Rome, St. James is buried in Santiago, Spain, and there's all these routes, and they're really cheap. Like there's pilgrim hostels along the way. You're not walking with a big group. There's many pilgrims on those paths.
A lot of Europeans, older folks,
Yeah,
they do it all the time. I'm serious, they're like 70 or 80 years old.
I really recommend.
They're in good shape.
That's like if you're really interested taking, we just did the Portuguese Camino in May, so you're walking from, Lisbon or Porto, Portugal.
Number of days,
To
tell them.
Santiago. Yeah, so we've done 500 miles and then we did 165 miles this May. And it's so you meet young people, people from all over the world.
And they have services, so you don't have to pack all your stuff.
They just carry a small,
They transfer it.
5 years ago, they did a whole month for about $200 a person. It's that cheap.
But then there's airfare tax.
Plus airfare.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you can't live
Yeah,
a week
you
in
can get
Europe
over
for
there.
$1,000 a year for tourists.
And it's pretty because you really get a sense of what Sister's saying. You're just living in the moment, you're trusting in God, you're present. You have all this beautiful prayer time, and then you cross paths with other pilgrims. It's very, you just surrender, you let go of all your worldly concerns and just living in that.
I met a lady on this one who had just come back from France, the Chartres one. That's supposed to be
it's a
the
beautiful
oldest
one.
pilgrimage.
Yeah.
And there's like 100,000 people on
Yeah.
that.
I think
And it's a particular time of the year.
Yeah, it's Pentecost. It's always the weekend of Pentecost
Yeah.
Sunday. And it's 3 days from Paris to the Cathedral of Chartres and going to the French countryside. So that would be a shorter one.
But
Yeah.
tough,
You
because
would-
you carry your
I think it's
stuff.
70 miles in 3 days.
Yeah, because they camp out.
A lot of miles.
70 miles?
I think something like that.
That's not too bad. 3 days.
Wait, you're complaining about 30 miles? You're doing the San Ynez to Santa Barbara prequel for next year then.
Well, that's 20 miles a day, right? 25 miles a day, so that's not that bad.
If you train.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the shoes make a difference, and the socks.
Yes.
Well, now we know who to turn to whenever we want to start a pilgrimage.
And
Both
sister.
of you.
Yeah, we're big pilgrimage walkers. It's sister.
Let's close with that. Sister, could you lead us out in a prayer?
Yes. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we praise you and thank you for your many blessings, graces, and gifts, for continuing to care for each one of us, for knowing what each day contains, and that we would listen and be open to whatever you desire to bring into our lives. May we be open and disposed for your holy will to be manifested, and that we would not be in control. And may we continue to grow in those virtues that unite us to you of faith, hope, and charity. And so we unite these prayers with you, Jesus, in each Mass celebrated throughout the world, throughout all time, present in all tabernacles throughout the world, and ask for the intercession of our Mother Mary, Saint Joseph, all the angels, saints in heaven, and souls in purgatory. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and never shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.